If you're ready to elevate the way the text in your children's book is presented to make each of your pages look even more unique, then this video is for you. Hi there, I'm Eevi, an award-winning children's author and ghostwriter over on eevijones.com and the creator of Children's Book University. I create videos specifically for children's authors, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. Not too long ago, I made a video on how we can use fonts or typography more creatively and effectively in our children's book. In that video, I talked about where we can use fonts, important font-related rules we must ensure to follow, and 7 creative ways to use fonts. I received so many messages telling me how this got your creative juices flowing and how this emboldened you to just break the norm and try something new. So in this video, we are going to look at 6 more fun ways traditional publishers use to elevate the way text is presented, and that might be perfect for our stories as well. So let's jump right in. Example number 1 is how we display our story's initial letter. The first detail I would like to look at and have some fun with is the use of a different initial letter of our very first word of our story. This is often referred to as a drop cap or raised cap, which is a large, often stylized capital letter that is used as a decorative element at the beginning of a paragraph or section. Drop caps usually fit nicely within our surrounding text, where the top of the character is often aligned with the top of the other words. And raised caps are aligned with the baseline of the first line of text. Bear Stays Up for Christmas by Karma Wilson and Jane Chapman is such a great raised caps example here. Using a decorative element like this raised cap makes this little block of text visually appealing and is such a sweet touch. For a children's picture book, we usually would use this drop cap or raised cap only at the very beginning of our story. For longer books like middle grade chapter books, we could also use it at the beginning of each chapter. Using these types of initials can be so much fun. So instead of beginning our book the regular way, we could place our first letter of our first word into a plain box or circle, for example. We could hand draw it, or we could make it book specific, where that initial letter features something that ties in with the topic of the book. Or we could give it a different color than our other text. There are so many different possibilities here. It's completely up to us. Example 2 is changing the orientation of our book. This one isn't really font specific, but I really wanted to include it here in this video because I always love it when I see this in a children's book. One of the most fun examples for this is the book Mal Fell by Corey Tabor. This one is extra special because instead of just a few pages, this book is printed sideways all the way. The book is about Mal, a little bird, and her flight and fall out of her nest as she is learning to fly. This is so unique and clever and beautifully integrates the story because the full spread is being used to show the distance of Mal's fall. So we have to hold the book sideways where the spine runs horizontally. Here, even the cover is printed sideways. The book I Love You Night and Day by Smitri Prasadam Halls is another cute example. Here only one page is printed sideways to really show the steep climb Bunny has to undertake to get to Bear. So again, this example isn't really font or text specific, but if using this technique fits our story, then why not integrate this orientation change that entails our text as well? Example 3 is to use a number of different fonts and stylizing our font. Now this one I already briefly mentioned and talked about in my previous font video. Again, if you haven't seen this one yet, I went ahead and copied the link to it in the description below. It's really important because it also goes over certain font rules we will need to know about and follow. The first example here is a book that is near and dear to my heart because I read this one hundreds of times to my boys when they were little. It's Smash, Smash, Crash, There Goes the Trash by Barbara Odanaka. This one is full of fun typographic uses. One of them is simply the use of regular and italicized text like we see in this example right here. And the reason this tiny change is so powerful is because it gives the reader a clue as to how to read the text. So whenever I would read this particular page, I would do it in a back and forth, two people talking kind of way, where the regular text is a statement that is narrating what is happening in the picture, while the italicized text is in question form that describes what kids in their fantasy world might think those sounds are coming from. Rumbling, roaring, dragons snoring, bumping, thumping, giants jumping, booming, banging, cymbals clanging. My boys loved this page. The entire book, really. The second example here is from the book My Shadow is Pink by Scott Stewart, which makes use of a different font in order to visually emphasize certain words. So anytime we want specific words to stand out visually, we could simply use a different font. Here, the use of a different font doesn't necessarily mean that we need to read it differently in terms of emphasis or volume. Here, the different font is simply meant to visually elevate it in order to show its importance. And the third example here is from the book Must Be Santa by Tim Moore. Here we are using a different font size in order to hint towards how to read this text in terms of the volume. So in this example, the font size grows from line to line, which to me, the reader, would indicate to either accelerate my reading or to perhaps increase my volume. Must be Santa, must be Santa, must be Santa, Santa Claus. Doing it this way isn't only visually more appealing, but it makes the reading of those 3 identical lines so much more fun. One of the best ninja tips I could ever give you when it comes to our font is to use our font to guide readers how to best read our story. Oftentimes, we as the author have a certain or specific way of reading our story, right? So when reading our book, pay attention to what words you are emphasizing, where you pause, where you accelerate, or where you slow down perhaps. Usually, these are things we can't really share with our future readers, right? Because we are not there with them when they are reading our story. But what we can do is insert little clues, and how we use our font here plays a major part in doing just that. So while commas and line breaks and other punctuation marks can help with letting our readers know when they should be pausing or raising or lowering their intonations, our use of fonts and the font size can help with letting our readers know what to emphasize, where to get loud, and where to get really quiet. Example number 4 is the use of space and the overall direction of our text. We can have so much fun with this one, and the possibilities here are nearly endless. The first shared example here works especially well if we have repeating text, like we see here in the book Horton Hatches the Egg by Dr. Seuss. Here, instead of presenting the repeated text on just a regular line, it is offset to really emphasize the passing of time. Then Horton the elephant smiled. Now that's that. And he sat, and he sat, and he sat, and he sat. The way the text is presented in the books Swirl by Joyce Sidman and Rumpelstiltskin is also so much fun to read. Here the reader will have to turn the entire book in order to read the text. A less involved but just as creative way to display our text is to make use of curves. So we can wrap our text around or in between our images, like we see here in the book Happy Dreamer by Peter H. Reynolds and The Tooth Fairy's Christmas by Peter Bentley. This makes our story so much more fun to look at and so much more fun to read. And using our text this way can be easily achieved, certainly by using programs like InDesign or Affinity Publisher, but also by free-to-use online graphic design tools like Canva. In Canva.com, for example, we have the curve option within the effects and shape sections for our text, along with all sorts of different style options that can be applied to hundreds and hundreds of different fonts. If you're already planning on using Canva to format your book or to add the text to your book, make sure you also check out my plug-and-go formatting templates that would make this whole text adding and formatting process even easier. I went ahead and shared the link to my plug-and-go formatting templates in the description below. Example 5 is to make our text an actual part of our story. This one is so much fun. Again, and the book The Day the Crayons Quit by Drew Daywald is such an amazing example. In this story, each page is meant to be a letter handwritten by a different crayon. And for each letter, the chosen font is meant to represent each crayon's handwriting, and the font color is that of the crayon that wrote that particular letter. It's so clever, and the use of the font and color is really meta here. Another way we can make our text an actual part of our story is to use sound words and to have those integrated and made part of our illustrations. The books Too Many Carrots by Katie Hudson and Smash Crash by John Skiska are great examples here. Sound words or onomatopoeia is such a beautiful addition to children's books. So whenever we could envision a sound, we could include the word version of that sound. For example, if something breaks, we could show the word crack in a fun, bold way. Or if something collides together, we could playfully show the word crash. In my book, How to Self-Publish a Children's Book, I shared a great onomatopoeia dictionary that we can find at writtensound.com. I went ahead and shared the link in the description below. It has so many examples on how we would write out different sounds like a sneeze or a cough or the sound of a car. Now, when including these sound words in our illustrations, we would want to do so in a fun, bold, and creative way. So looking at these examples again, we can see that those aren't just placed on a regular line, right? The letters of each of these sound words are all over the page. So my second ninja tip here would be that if we are using programs like Canva, we can easily achieve this look by selecting a fun font and then either using their effects section that I previously mentioned, or by taking individual letters and then individually rotating them and applying different sizes to each of them. And example number 6 is to make use of speech bubbles, either for the entire book or for just parts of it. This again is so much fun and I love using this method. This one works particularly well if we have a lot of dialogue in our story. So for example, in my book, Ego, Sheep and Knittery, Being Humble and Other Great Stuff, the entire story is presented as a conversation between Ego, who is a really boastful little guy, and Sheep, who is knitting away, trying to show Ego in a playful way how to be a bit more humble. Some other great examples are Say Something by Peter H. Reynolds and The World Needs More Purple People by Kristen Bell and Benjamin Hart, where it's a mix of regular text and text presented in speech bubbles. This makes our story so much more engaging. So speech bubbles aren't just for comic books or graphic novels. We can use them for our picture books as well. I really love playing with the different elements within a book, especially with the text, whether that's the font, the styling of the font, the size, the color, or the placement. Playing with these things can make our book seem even more special, elevating it to the next level. In the first video I made about fonts, I put together a font cheat sheet that shares a number of my favorite fonts for children's books, along with where we can get those fonts. So I made sure to share it here in the description below the video as well, along with a video that shows how we can use more colorful language with 8 things that are tried and true that little ones love seeing in their children's books, and a video sharing different illustration techniques that help us tie our story together visually. These are all different elements of our children's book: our text, our illustrations, and the use of our language, all of which can be tweaked and played with to truly make our book as special as it can possibly be. I'm really so excited that with each new video I create for you, it adds a piece to a bigger puzzle, which of course is our beautiful children's book. I hope you found this video really helpful and that it got your creative juices flowing. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really encourages me to keep making free videos for you just like this one. Here's to creating a truly unique children's book.